the Mexican language, okay? And they're saying this is, the Nahuatl language, whenever you try to look up, what language did the Mayans and them speak. I thought it was interesting that, they're saying that in this early part of the book, we got to put it that they believe this comes from, the Elamites, okay, and from East Iran. I mean, when it's all said and done, I've gathered that all this stuff points back to India, okay, for a large extent. Like, I was learning about this tree. It's called the banyan tree, and it's all over the place in Hawaii, apparently, because that's where I learned about it. I'd seen it in Florida when I was growing up as a child. I just didn't remember what it was. It was one of those trees where the roots grow out of the ground, and they look like the branches, right, of the tree. And there's like tons of them. And I was looking into it because that book was it the Southern Gods of Buddhism. The video this guy did on YouTube, and he was reading from that book sections. He cherry picked, basically. So I tried looking at the book, and it's like $300, and I'm like, I don't have that kind of money to buy a book, But in that book, he points out the banyan tree and how the banyan tree was so big that it covered a whole city. Okay, this tree was it grew like because of all the roots. The root system just works like a fence. It just wrapped around the whole city, and the French kept trying to penetrate this jungle because they were looking for a city and they couldn't find it until they finally found a guy that could take them in there and show them the entry to the tree so they could get to the city. But these things are massive. And so I was learning about the banyan tree because I thought, like, hey, I've seen those when I was growing up in Florida. Those trees, that's what those are. They're beautiful, right? And come to find out, like they're in Hawaii and other places, tropical places, but they're from India. They're not from these places. So you got to ask yourself, how did they end up here in this hemisphere? Okay, somebody had to bring them over here, just like watermelon. I was learning about cucumbers because it's one of my favorite vegetables. And I was shocked to find out cucumbers are a melon, right? And they come from the watermelon family. And melons, period, come from India. So again, someone from there brought this over here, right? So I'm not surprised when they're going to give us a location that's that close. But the Elamites, I was like, why does that name sound familiar? And of course they're going to try to show you the Elamites as being the people over there, today. They don't look like us. Then I remembered, oh my goodness. My sons and I, every night we've been going through a chapter, right, of the Bible. And, it's not in chronological order or anything like that. Like, we've done Proverbs, we've done, different books. But right now we're in Genesis. And I want to say around early April, we were doing Noah in them. And that's when it dawned on me. This is one of this is one of Shem's children. So why in this book are they trying to put that this is an Aryan, and they're trying to say the Aryans are Japhetites? So I just want to show you this guy's video just because he's going to explain it. I couldn't find, I like to go to use Lex Will's work because that's who I study under, or study from. I just couldn't find a specific video because he broke this down earlier too. And so forgive me, I'm not trying to teach somebody else or glorify anybody else. I'm just saying this is what I found, and he points it out, So when you think about the Elamites, get this idea that they're Japhetites, they're Iranians, that kind out of their head,
We'll go ahead and continue. We're going to talk about the line of Shem, the children of Shem, Elam and Asher and Arphaxad and Lud and Aram. That's Genesis 10:22. So today I'm just going to talk about two sons, the first two sons of Shem, Elam and Asher. Now, Elam and Asher are two very, very, very important pieces to this puzzle. It was the discovery of Elam and Asher that kind of cemented the fact that Israelites not only could possibly be black, but for sure, the line of Shem was black. And I'll tell you why I didn't 100% conclude that the Israelites were black right away as we get through this, but it had to do with mostly with mixing, which I kind of solved as I continued to research the subject. But Elam came first, and then Asher kind of cemented my belief as leaning towards Israelites definitely being black, and then trying to figure out whether or not they maintained their blackness throughout the thousands of years and through slavery and everything else. So I just want to clarify some of that. Hopefully I clarified. If not, the journey will clarify itself as we continue. So Elam, started looking into the Elamites, and lo and behold, we find this picture, and this picture's on the walls at Susa in Shushan Palace. Now, if you go to any Bible program app you have on your phone and type in Shushan, Shushan, you will find the references to the Elamites at Shushan Palace. And so when I found this, I was like, okay, this is interesting. These are definitely black people. And furthermore, the Bible refers to the Elamites being archers. And as you can see in the picture here, they all have bows and quivers. I don't see any arrows in the quivers, but they do have bows and quivers for arrows. And so this this solidified for me and early in my journey that, okay, if there's any truth to Israelites being black, this evidence is very, very convincing, because now I don't have to adhere to the modern European teaching that Shem was brown or Middle Eastern or olive looking, because as I said in the part 1, it doesn't make sense that Ham would be the only black brother. If his father wasn't black, it would make sense for his brothers to be black as well. So we know that Ham was black. We know the Cushites were black. And here we
Also, when you get a chance, I'll even try to flash it when I get a chance. Look at in the video, the first one I did, the chapter 1. Remember the part where they described them. I never really looked at it this way, but because like when they describe them, they try to describe like the typical image of the Aztec, the hook nose and stuff like that. But I'm like, look at these fellas. Look at that nose. Look at it. And the curl hair. The curls in the hair. Wavy hair. I was like, okay. That is interesting.
We find the first son, the descendants of the first son of Shem are depicted as black, and we can see their hair here. We can see their beards, their hair. It looks like Afro hair. It looks like these are supposed to be kinks or naps or whatever you want to call them. That is black people hair. So that was one of the biggest convincers that the line of Shem was definitely dark, just like the line of Ham. Now Asher is a Shemite, which is interesting because, again, when you start to study some of the culture, you don't get this from the European or the Eurocentric Christian doctrine. They don't teach you that Asher was a Semite. They do all this talking about the Assyrians, and they don't get into Asher really. So we're going to touch on Asher for a few minutes. This is going to be a somewhat short video, because I do want to get into the Gentiles and then move on from there and start laying some of the deeper stuff, connecting all the dots. So I'll go ahead and read this from Genesis 10:8-11, and you'll recognize this from part 1 because this is the part dealing with Nimrod the Cushite. And Cush begat Nimrod, and he began to be a mighty one in the earth. He was a mighty hunter before the Lord, wherefore it is said, even as Nimrod the mighty hunter before the Lord. And the beginning of his kingdom was Babel, and Erech, and Akkad, and Calneh in the land of Shinar. Out of that land went forth Asher, and builded Nineveh, and the city of Rehoboth, and Calah. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right. I told you guys I'm terrible with other languages pronunciation. So out of that land went forth Asher. So Asher came out of a Cushite empire, even though he is an Israelite. I'm sorry, not an Israelite, a Hebrew or Shemite. Let me back up. Let me not get ahead of myself. He's a Shemite.
Because remember, the quote unquote definition of Hebrew is those that crossed over, but we know that that's not even right. The Hebrew is the Hebrew, right?
We'll come back to the Hebrew thing later. So Asher is a Shemite, or a person from the line of Shem, a descendant of Shem. He came out of the Cushite Empire, and he built Nineveh. We're not gonna get into the other two cities, but we're gonna talk about Nineveh right now. So here is a picture of the Assyrians, and as we can see, look at their hair, look at the lips, look at the noses, look at the hair again over here, the beards, the hair, the noses, the lips. These are the Assyrians. This is important because we just saw the Elamites. The Elamites were black. And now we look at the Assyrians and we see that they have black features. So now we have a second son of Shem confirmed to be a dark-skinned people, more than likely. Now, before I go there to the next slide, I just want to point something out. People can go back and forth about all this stuff all day, and this is the reason I love to use European sources. I believe these reliefs right here, this picture is found at the British Museum. I think it's the British Museum in London or something like that. If not, correct me and in the comments and let me know. But when you start to dig a little deeper past the surface stuff, people can argue because this doesn't have any color on it, like, oh, they could have been this or that. But we see the facial features, we see the hair, we see the lips, we see the beards, we see the noses. But when you dig into the Hebrew, the Strong's Concordance was not written by black people. And so when we go to Strong's, we see, what do we see here? Proper name, masculine, Ashkur, or Asher as it is translated. Definition: black and Israelite. Black and Israelite. Proper name, masculine in Judah. Now, we'll come back to that. But again, one more time, black and Israelite. So we have Asher, whose name means black. We see the Assyrians, who have black features. We saw Elam, or the Elamites, who are black people, and these people come from the line of Shem, and Shem is the brother of who? Ham. Now, Eurocentric Christian doctrine will tell you that all black people came from Ham, but this is not true. And the Zondervan Bible Dictionary tells you that all the black races except for the Negro came from Ham. And you guys can go on Black History.
No, I just got a question. Okay, they love to do everything in reverse, right? Right? It's the whole caste system. You know, all of a sudden, what was on the bottom is now on the top, right? Quote unquote, if you have melanin in your skin, you're untouchable, you're unwanted, you know, you're the lowest life form, you know. But if you have less melanin in your skin, you're desirable, right? You know, it's the whole, man evolved from apes. Well, the black man is the closest thing to the ape, right? But what they don't show you, what I found out on my own, was that the end of the evolution is the quote unquote, I say this, quote unquote, white man. And he's closer to the image of God, right, than the ape, right? So, I wonder, just bear with me, if they're trying to switch this around and say, hey, you know, the quote unquote black people come from Ham, right? I wonder if it's them, because they, you know, that they come from Ham. See what I'm saying? Because they just want to flip everything in reverse. I mean, it's a question, and I mean, how do you answer it? Is it because of the mixing with fish people? You know, I wonder.
historyinthebible.com, and if you look up, if you type in the search bar up there, Zondervan Bible Dictionary, you'll see that entry from the Zondervan Bible Dictionary that names all of the Ham, or how all of Ham's descendants, and says that Ham is not the originator of the Negro, or the progenitor, however you want to pronounce it. He's not the father or the starting line for the Negro. This is important because, as we just saw, Shem's line does contain black people. So even Zondervan, who is not a black-owned publishing company, separates the Hamite or the African from the Shemite, the Negro. They look similar, but they are not from the same lineage. And so this is important because Eurocentric Christian doctrine and even some of the urban apologetics community will try to convince you that we, all black people, came from the line of Ham. And we know this is not true now just by looking at the first two sons of Shem.
You always wondered why that.
See a different relief. This is definitely in the British Museum in London. And so these are the Assyrians right here. I actually tried to put on a setting to set color my mouse. So hopefully you guys are seeing a colored mouse. I don't know what color it's going to be. But here, these are the Assyrians. Same Assyrians I just showed you. You see the beards and you see the hair. These are the Assyrians. And they have captured. These are captives at Nineveh. This is a relief found at Nineveh. Look at these guys right here. Look at the hair. Look at the beards. Look at the lips. Look at the broad noses. You can see these are not Europeans. These are not Arabs. These are black people, Negroes. We see the hair. The hair gives it all away. But let's not just stop there and make any assumptions. I find it interesting that the more we start digging into this mystery about who we are, the more hard evidence we turn up. And so this is a bigger picture of the relief. You see the Assyrians here. You see some Assyrian soldiers. You see these captives here. You see more Assyrians over here. Some down here. Now this is important. This big scene right here. We have the Assyrians who come from Asher. And as we've seen, the Assyrians have black features. Their brother Elam, who the Elamites are also depicted as black. And so that would tell us that Shem was black. That's the only way you're getting these black people coming out of these lines, right? So I went over to Wikipedia, looked up some information on this picture, and once again, people have a problem with Wikipedia, but I think it's interesting that anybody can contribute to Wikipedia. And the reason I'm saying this is because sometimes you find that academics and people with a lot of credentials like to contribute to Wikipedia. So on this picture, and I did keep part of the picture in there in this screenshot for a reason, so that you know that I'm not making this stuff up. So if you go down here in the picture credits on Wikipedia, the link will be in the notes. You go down into the picture credits and you read the description in English, a summary. It says this: after a long siege, the city of Lachish, however you want to pronounce it, surrendered and the Assyrian army entered the city. King Sennacherib sits on his royal chair. We'll go back and I'll show you that. Surrounded by attendants and great high-ranking official. So King Sennacherib right here, surrounded by attendants and a great high-ranking official. This guy right here. These are the Assyrians, as I told you. So they had sieged the city. They went in. It says, the king reviews Judean prisoners. These guys right here, the ones that look like black people, Judean prisoners. The cuneiform inscriptions read, Sennacherib, king of the world, king of Assyria, sat on the throne, and the booty of the Lachish passed before him. Wall relief from Southwest Palace at Nineveh. I'm not even going to try to pronounce all this. Mesopotamia, Neo-Assyrian period, 700 to 692 BCE, the British Museum in London. So Sennacherib, he's the king. He's surrounded by his attendants. These are the Assyrians, the ones with black features. These are the Judean prisoners. Now, people are saying, well, this is Wikipedia. How can we trust it? So it tells us the author, Osama Shakur Mohammed Amin. That's the most Arab name I've ever heard of in my life. And then you see these letters after him, right? This is Glasgow, short for Glasgow, Germany. These are credentials, FRCP. So I decided to click it because I didn't want to just say, okay, well, this is the guy who did it. Go do your own research. No, I'm not that type of teacher. I don't tell you to go look it up yourself without providing you the source. I'll provide you a source and say, hey, go follow up and check this out if you want. Now, this source says his own work. Now, usually people reference other stuff for sources, but let me show you this guy because I went and looked at it and I was like, okay, let me see who this guy is. Who am I? He has a whole section right here. Dr. Osama Shakur Mohammed Amin. Look at all these letters behind his name. I went and looked these up. You should go look these up and see what these letters mean. It means this guy knows what he's talking about. It means this guy is educated. This means this guy is involved in a lot of official work stuff. And I feel like he was in school his whole life to get all these letters behind his name. He talks about his interest in photography and all that stuff, and he takes these pictures himself. He travels around the world because of all these letters in his name that when you look them up, you'll see why. You see these pictures right here of all his colleagues and academic achievements and all this. He takes these pictures himself. And so you can go look this guy up and verify what I'm saying. But more importantly, I want to put this up here because he's not a black guy. A lot of the urban apologists and Eurocentric Christian teachers like to say that we have an agenda when we teach this stuff. We have an agenda. We're making this stuff up, or we're reading into the documents and the text and the pictures and all that. This guy is not black. I'm assuming he's Arab based on his name. The assumption is that he is Arab. And it was him that said, these are Judean prisoners. Judean prisoners. Again, look at the hair, look at the nose, look at the lips. These are Judean prisoners. So let's continue. Judea. I went to the Encyclopedia Britannica. It's their 250th anniversary they're celebrating. Encyclopedia Britannica says this: Judea, also spelled Judea or Judah, Hebrew, Yehuda, the southernmost of the three traditional divisions of ancient Palestine. The other two were Galilee in the north and Samaria in the center. No clearly marked boundary divided Judea from Samaria, but the town of Beersheba was traditionally the southernmost limit. The region presents a variety of geographic features, but the real core of Judea was the upper hill country known as her Yehuda, Hills of Judea, extending south from the region of Bethel at present-day Ramallah to Beersheba and including the area of Jerusalem, Bethlehem, and Hebron. So, in Judea, he called these the Judeans, these guys that look black. And here in the Encyclopedia Britannica, Judea is also referred to as Judah or Yehuda. This is not a black-owned source. So when they say that we have an agenda, they have to explain why these Europeans and these Arabs are also saying the same thing that we're saying. He called those guys Judeans. The Encyclopedia Britannica links the Judeans to Judah. This is going to be important later on, which is why I'm laying the groundwork now.
Place of Mexican in the Aryan group. It will doubtless be said at once that language is no final test of race affinity. This is sometimes true, but I will add that language is almost the only thing which priests and politicians have never been able to affect seriously. The Mexican language is so primitive in vocabulary, structure, and thought forms that if it has been produced by contact or the mingling of races, or by conquest, the fact was accomplished at a very remote period. Its vowel system closely resembles the Avestan. Hence, if the Aztecs were not Aryan in race originally, their absorption by Aryans took place so long ago that for linguistic purposes we must call them Aryan. The post-positive system places Nahuatl among the Pamir dialects, very primitive, and the modern Aryan languages of India, but the post-positive system is also Turanian. I quote here, as they proposed, a description of the Ainu of Japan. The forehead is narrow and sharply sloped backward. The cheekbones are prominent. The nose is hooked, slightly flattened and broad, with wide, strong nostrils. The skin is light reddish-brown. Eyes set straight in the head. Hair for most part black and wavy. Beard dark and handsome. The Ainu are said to be Aryans. Kuss describes the Gauchos and the Dardui as pure Aryan stock and pre-Sanskritic. He thinks the Pamir region was the primitive seat of the Indo-Iranians. Why not of all the Aryans? See, geographical names, chap. XVI. But Forlong radically disputes the entire theory of Aryan influence in India and maintains that Turanians